Looking to create a life filled with connection, creativity, and a little bit of audacious charm? At withmagsy.com, we bring people together in all the best ways. Join the Supper Club, where food, laughter, and great company make every gathering unforgettable. Tune in to the local Whidbey with Magsy podcast, celebrating the small businesses and bold dreamers that make up audacious islanders and shape Whidbey Island. Transform your home with Spaces, a personalized interior styling service that reflects your style and brings your space to life. Ready to gather, be inspired, and make your space truly yours? Visit withmagsy.com today. Hey Whidbey dreamers and doers, welcome back to Local Whidbey with Magsy, where we celebrate the movers, shakers, and change makers who make our island such a special place to call home. Today we're diving deep, literally into the world of Salinity, an online and farmers market store bringing you the freshest Olympia oysters, geoduck stickers and mugs, and other incredibly oceanic edibles, all while championing sustainability, community, and equality. At the helm of this salty sea-loving venture is the brilliant and audacious Islander Emily Wilder, a true force of nature with a passion for saltwater, fresh air, and a better planet. Salinity isn't just about amazing seafood, it's about connection. Connection to nature, to native foods, and to a community that values fairness, sustainability, and the power of protecting our oceans and environment. Today we'll chat with Emily Wilder about her journey to founding Salinity, how she's blending her love for the ocean with her commitment to a greener planet, and why her mission to fight for equal rights is just as important as the highest quality seafood she delivers. This is more than just a business, it's a movement. So grab your favorite beachy beverage, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. Emily's story is one that will leave you craving both the incredible seafood she sells and a deeper connection to the natural world. Let's dive in. Hi, Emily. What did you think about that intro?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Did I nail it or it was over-exaggerated?
It was great. I just wish that I had real live gooey duck to sell people instead of just gooey duck stickers. I know we talked about this beforehand, but that's one of my big goals for the next couple years is find a local gooey duck farm that I can work directly with.
So I have a little gooey duck story. Years ago when my boys were little, we lived in Beaverton, Oregon. And we rented a cabin in the Olympic Peninsula for 2 weeks. And I really wanted them to have the experience of digging for clams and things like that. And it was the first time I ever heard of gooey duck because I passed a pub called the Gooey Duck Pub. I'm like, what is that?
They don't even sell gooey duck.
Yeah.
Actually, that pub.
At that pub,
very tragic.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so I asked someone how you would find a gooey duck, and they said, well, they spit out of holes in the sand. So now we were all obsessed about finding one, and we found one, and it was so big, but I was also super disgusted because me being from cities, I'd never seen that before, ever. And so my husband was driving up to what we rented on the weekends, and I was there with my boys during the week. And so I saved it for him to chop up. I couldn't even chop that thing up because I was so disgusted by it. It reminded me of a huge snail, which I hate. I would never eat escargot because though, I just see them as things I smash in my garden. And so that's what it reminded me of. So that's my, that's my story.
Well, to be fair, they are related to snails.
Okay, then.
They're all in the mollusk, family, phylum, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
It is. And they, just like actually spiders are related to crabs, crustaceans, and shrimp. It's part of why I get grossed out by a crab. I don't really want to be eating spider relatives, but mollusks, I'm all in. I'll eat snails.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are, and I've said this to you earlier, you're one of the first people I've met who's lived here your whole life. I mean, you've come and gone in your adult life, but you grew up here. You were raised here.
I spent 8 years off the island, but otherwise 32 I'm 32 now and born and raised on the island.
So tell the listener about your childhood growing up. Is unusual compared to me and most people, where we're just going to the grocery store and your mom's forcing seafood down your throat. And it's so different when you actually are eating fresh seafood. And I didn't know that until I was an adult. So tell the listener about your childhood here.
Yeah, so I was born in the house that I lived in until I was 18 in Clinton, close to the ferry, but on 4 acres. So we had forest to run around in, a pond, field, all sorts of stuff. And my sister went to the Waldorf school for a couple of years. So that was kind of our culture, I would say, as far as the different subsets on the island. It was very nature-based, very natural things. We had a giant organic garden, and I was actually raised pescatarian. So it was vegetarian with a whole lot of wild Alaskan salmon. And then we would eat seafood when we went, out to restaurants, which wasn't super often, but just a lot of vegetables.
So where did the wild Alaskan salmon come from?
From the Star Store.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe you had a big fishing trip, or your dad did, or something like that once a year.
My parents their food is not their main focus. They're both social workers. And so what they care about is, how do I help people as much as possible? My mom is a music therapist as well. And so music was the main focus, much more than food. It was kind of in my teens that I really got into food as the main focus of my life.
Well, I'm a foodie as well, and I didn't realize until I was out of my house that one reason I didn't like certain things was because they weren't cooked right. Like Brussels sprouts. I hated them until I made them as an adult and realized that they were overcooked in my family. And so that's the reason I didn't like them. So one of the things in researching you and trying to get to know you is I was really impressed with your journey in majoring in sustainable foods and agriculture in Olympia, and then you went to Boston. And so I want to talk about that and about your passion for sustainable food, but also going from one side of the country to the other. There had to have been a reason you had to go to Boston. So
yeah, well, the main reason is my father is from Boston, and my grandfather was heavily involved with the school that I ended up going to grad school at, Bentley University. So my entire life, it was who's going to go to Bentley. It's a really amazing business school, really strong in business ethics, but it's very, they turn out really ethical accountants. They do a lot of other stuff as well now. And they have an amazing marketing program and all sorts of stuff. But I never really had a reason, I was like, I'm going to be a nutritionist, or I'm going to be a farmer, something more like that. And then when I was studying food and agriculture at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, I stumbled upon a shellfish farm on the school's campus. They have 2 miles of beach, 1,000 acres of forest protecting that beach, and an educational oyster and clam farm that's just for students to eat and learn about. So I got roped into running that farm. And I was like, I am not going to study marine science. I don't really know anything about this. And they were like, that's okay. You really just need to memorize an hour's worth of content and be willing to get muddy in the middle of the night with 30 students that you're responsible for. And that memorizing that information and learning about shellfish got me into marketing and made me realize that the difference between somebody enjoying an oyster or not is so much to do with the information that they have about it, the story that you tell before they eat, while they're eating, after they eat, as well as access to actual fresh food. So that led me to running a restaurant right after undergrad. And I realized that just doing the marketing and getting the customers in, which I was doing really well, wasn't enough because we did not have our costs under control. This restaurant had never saved a receipt in their life.
Oh, wow.
They were, tons of revenue, but just barely making things work. So that led me to business school to try and figure out, okay, how do we keep the restaurants like this alive? Because they had the best sourcing ever. It was really good food. They were working with tons of local farms, and they had to close. So was like, okay, I'm going to go and figure out, what are the corporations doing?
Right.
How do we use the information that all of these big businesses are using successfully to keep small businesses alive? The finances, the bookkeeping, all of the like nitty gritty annoying things that most farmers and chefs and stuff don't want to think about at all. So long answer to that's what brought me over there, and just curiosity of what is that other side of the country like. And turns out I'm very obsessed with the West Coast native oyster, and I could not be away from it for more than 2 years. So I moved back to tell people about how good West Coast oysters are instead.
Okay, that's a good answer, and that there was ties through your father.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have, my background is my mother's from Fort Worth, Texas, but my dad's from the Bronx, New York City. And so I understand that juxtaposition from having a family that someone's from the East Coast and someone's from definitely somewhere else.
Yeah, so you have to try out both cultures, see where you fit. Did you live in both places?
No, I didn't, but when we would occasionally go up to New Jersey and New York to visit family and cousins and things, I just loved them to death and realized that that's where I got part of my personality is from that culture, being very direct and way more so than the absolute politeness of the South and the culture I grew up in. From a mom, I've never heard gossip in her life, ever, to hearing the jokes and the punchlines and the constant jabbing that goes on in the Northeast. That's just part of what they do, and thinking that was funny, and glad to meet people who thought that kind of stuff was funny, And so, but I never lived there, but I've visited a lot for sure. Yeah. Transform your home with Pereira Island Construction, where owners Mike and Susanna Pereira bring over 30 years of experience to every project, specializing in custom decks, patio covers, garden sheds, and garages. They deliver quality craftsmanship and trustworthy service. Serving all of Whidbey Island in Western Washington, they ensure seamless communication and on-site organization from start to finish. No upfront payments, you pay only when the job is complete and you're satisfied. Contact Mike at 360-200-7887 for a free consultation, and visit PereiraIslandConstruction.com to learn more. Pereira Island Construction, building trust with quality work. Okay, let's talk about salinity and tell the listener what that means and why you came back to the island to start your dream business.
Okay, so my business is called Salinity. The long name is Salinity Seafood and More. And the name salinity came from it's a common word in the oyster industry and other areas, because it means the amount of salt in a liquid or a solid. So you can have varying salinity levels. Like the 2 oyster farms that I work with have different salinity levels in their bay. So I work with the Swinomish tribe's farm up in Simoke Bay, which is by Fidalgo Island. It's just through Deception Pass. So ocean water comes in through Deception Pass, and it gets mixed with the not so salty water from the rest of Puget Sound, and that's in Simoke Bay where the Swinomish tribe grows their oysters. Then that salty ocean water continues further south to the north end of Camino Island in Skagit Bay. That's the other farm I work with, Skagit Shellfish. And there, that slightly less salty water gets mixed with tons of fresh water from the glaciers that comes through Skagit River. So that salinity level is much lower. So you can try these oysters side by side, same species, different bays, and you can taste a difference in the salt level, which impacts how you're tasting the food, because salt enhances flavors in a lot of ways, or if you have too much of it, it'll distract from the flavors. So that's kind of so I started the business in order to do oyster education. Because I thought for a while that I would do more like, oyster nonprofit work, but there's kind of a limit of how many people you can get to listen to you if you're just like, let me teach you about oysters. Right. You can get a little further if you're like, let me sell you oysters and you can eat them. But you can get a lot further if you're like, here are some oysters. Oh, you don't like that? What about smoked salmon? Oh, what about, hazelnuts that are grown locally, or some chocolate? Everyone likes chocolate. Here, try this. Also, can I tell you about oysters?
Right.
So that's kind of how I ended up with a business that started with oysters and now has about 200 products from small businesses in the Northwest, because I really just want to talk to people about our native oyster. Right. And I got to bring them in with as many things as possible so that we can maybe get there a little bit, because there are so many spectacular businesses out there that and so many delicious foods and products that I want to share with people. Right. So even if they don't like oysters, we will find something great. But the overall thing is there's so much more to the food that you're eating. Right. And you can eat something that tastes really good, that had good environmental impacts, and that was made by somebody who was happy to make it. And that really does not go for, most of the food and stuff that we're wearing. That's not always the story.
Right. Okay. So when you were saying this about the less salty oyster and the more salty oyster, here's what grabbed me. So most of my life, not an oyster eater, but you also have to realize I, was tasting oysters in Texas, and I loved them in gumbo when I was in New Orleans. But I couldn't eat them raw. I just couldn't. I didn't understand or didn't like really not chewing my food. Why would I eat something that I'm just going to swallow?
You actually should chew oysters.
Right. That's what I was taught.
Yes. That's been, it's just in the last 10 years we've been like, oh, actually, no, tell everyone you need to chew them. Don't choke on them.
Here's the big thing. So I had, with my supper club with Magsy, we had a Louisiana style theme. And I wanted to have oysters, and I had never grilled them or cooked them and put them back in the shell with toppings. They were a huge hit. And so when you just said about the waters merging together and you have the less salty, I became super interested in trying the less salty, because I have a salt aversion. Big time. My body has a salt aversion. Yeah. And so that was another reason I didn't eat them. But I didn't know any of that, what you just said.
Yeah. So the Skagit ones, it's like a fresh spring salad. So the Pacific oyster species. So I can get into the species part of it later. That's kind of a whole educational segment. But there's a lot of like cucumber melon flavor notes with that species. And that's the species that most of the oyster farms in Washington are growing, the whole West Coast. Actually, like 95% of the world are growing this species, but they taste really different depending on where they're grown. But most of the time they are, they're very salty. So you don't quite taste that as much, but like, like a fresh, juicy spring salad that's like crunchy and like watery, but like, I don't know, green. That's
my
what
wheels are turning, because now I want to have you at one of my supper club events, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to taste all the different kinds, because when you were saying these notes and this and that, I'm like, really? I mean, I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Yeah. I need to give oysters another chance.
Well, I'm going to be doing oyster workshops.
Okay.
So upstairs in this Bayview Cash store.
Okay.
And my first one is February 15th. Okay. That is all booked up already. And I've just added 2 dates for March. So March 15th and March 29th.
I could bring a group of people here. Probably be easier.
Yep. We'll taste oysters. I'll have a slideshow. We'll talk about life cycle, growing, sustainability, climate change, all the things that are impacted by oysters. And then in shucking demonstration, you'll shuck 3 different oysters, the Olympia oyster species and 2 different kinds of the Pacifics from the 2 different bays.
Right.
And I also have an app that we can use that I've set up that you can record the tasting profile and all sorts of different tasting notes, texture, all sorts of stuff, and then keep them. And, like you can do a different tasting every week and then review how the oysters have changed, because there's a lot of changing throughout the seasons of oyster flavor. Wow. And even week to week, the flavor can change because the salinity level is always slightly changing. And a lot of their flavor comes from the microalgae in their stomach, which is like the super high omega-3 concentration that we love from oysters. But it's like 1,000 different species, basically, that are always in there creating that flavor. And so that's always kind of shifting a little bit.
Wow. Okay. This is very educational for me. So now I'm interested, and we're going to do that. I'm going to have an event where we do that.
I would love that.
Here.
Anytime.
What's the max people you can have?
Here I'm trying to cap it at like 20. So I'm doing 16 on the 15th, and I'm going to see, is that too much, too little?
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But I do a lot of workshops down at the Evergreen State College now. I go down quarterly and do they have classes 30 to 60 people, and we do this, and then we go down to the beach and we harvest the oysters.
That's awesome.
Do all the stuff. It's awesome, except when it's midnight and raining, which is fall and winter quarter. That's what you're dealing with. So,
okay, great. So what I was sitting here thinking in all of this is so interesting to me. What has been the most rewarding thing having your own business so far? On your entrepreneur
the oyster
journey.
Education, there's so much that I've loved about it, but for me, as you can tell, I can't help but be like, let me tell you more things about oysters. Will you let me talk for an hour about it? So especially having the store now, people come in, and because I'm sharing the space with the Island Shakespeare Festival, I get to tell everybody about our amazing summer festival, how we always do a play by a female playwright, and all of these great things. And then I get to be like, and can I tell you about oysters? And even people who don't like oysters or want to know, sometimes they'll end up interested in the things, and as well as being able to show all of the other products to them and answer their questions.
So how do you feel that your business supports the community?
Well, I carry a lot of products from the community. My shop is about 95% Pacific Northwest small businesses items, and a lot of those are people on Whidbey. And some of the products are from people who are really just getting started with their business. So I'm either their first retailer or one of their first. I also do website and marketing consulting on the side. And so sometimes we'll build a website and then I'll be like, great, can I sell your products? Can we get this out there? So I really wanted the business to be an additional marketing piece for people, because when I introduce someone to one of these new businesses or established businesses that they haven't heard of already, I don't care if they come back here to buy it or if they go directly to that business. The reason that they would buy through me is if they're wanting to get, a dozen different items from different places. It saves them time. But if it's just the one thing they're obsessed with, they should go right there, and they should tell their friends that's the product that they love.
Yeah, that made my wheels turn, because, I have my Audacious Islander brand that I'm doing, and I would love to have it in shops, different shops down here in the north side as well. But yeah, that's great. I am such a buy local person first. I mean, I really am. So I'm very glad that you're doing that. Such a great service, for sure.
Yeah, and delicious snacks.
So to me, I think I could even answer this next question because of things that you've said during this interview. And the question is, how do you think local culture influences your products or services? But you just answered it.
It is, it is local culture.
Right.
I mean, the big part of it also, so much of this South Whidbey, especially the Whidbey Island culture, is about supporting each other.
Right.
And that is, there's no way that I could run a business anywhere, but especially here, without integrating as much local as possible and as many other people's stuff as possible.
Right.
And, this partnership that I have with the Island Shakespeare Festival, I am able to add more joyful, playful elements to this, and we're adding in colors and silliness, and it's really trying to spread as much happiness as possible. which I think is something that Whidbey Island does really well. But sometimes in the winter, especially, it can be tough for us. So I'm trying to help that.
Right. Yeah, I get that totally. Especially if businesses sell primarily at like the farmers markets. That's where I met you the first time and tasted some oysters for sure. Because those only last so long. So then what do they do? So yeah, I'm glad you're doing that marketing, for them and teaching them how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I'm doing, I do delivery to people's houses in addition to the shipping around the country. But I wanted to really, make something that, even if you don't want to leave your house in the winter because it's cold and you're sad, like we can get you some good food. And that's why, I started selling these yellow tinted glasses that will turn cloudy days into sunny days. They trick your brain into thinking that it's sunny.
That's awesome.
And, just little bits of happiness.
So what has been surprising thing that you've learned from your customers, your clients? Anything surprising?
I'm just always so like, I don't know, surprised. I did hope that this would be the case, but really seeing it in action has been so heartwarming. Like just how willing people are to buy these products and support these businesses and support me. It's like, I feel so incredibly like lucky and grateful every day, and because these are not cheap products. And a lot of the time when you're starting a business, your friends and family will say, like, why would somebody buy this when they can just, go to Walmart and, or they can go to Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's would be like, the like, oh no, not Walmart, but I'll go to Trader Joe's and I can get it for such a great price. Isn't that great? Yeah. And then they're like, well, why would I pay, twice as much for this item? And, there's a lot of fear and skepticism around that. And a lot of the consulting I do, I have people ask, like, pricing is one of the big things we talk about because a lot of what I do is also, it's kind of like business therapy. It's like, how do we deal with the emotions of putting yourself out there, and dealing with customer feedback and all of that. And pricing is so stressful because you worry that you're charging too much. Yeah. You want to make things accessible to everyone, but you also need it to be sustainable for you in the long term. So it's been just so nice that people come in and they don't even look at the price. They just put things on the counter and suddenly they're like, I have an armful of delicious things and I'm so happy. And also, we do have a lot of people on Whidbey Island who do have, a good amount of money for discretionary spending on high quality foods. Right. So I'm grateful for that as well.
So you have these wonderful people who are creative. And they, and everything that goes into, just in packaging alone, in branding and making sure you have your very own and then meeting all the requirements to sell food. That's a big deal. And so I'm like you. I don't mind paying the extra because I know what goes into it.
No. And then also there's all of the administrative stuff that people don't factor in. There's the time to actually do the thing, but then you have bookkeeping, you have permits, you have licenses, you have all of the time you spend with your accountant working on your taxes every year. Like that has to be factored into your price.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what's a piece of advice you wish you had when you started your business?
Well, actually, on the topic of accounting and bookkeeping, because I love that work. Right. Actually, it's one of my favorite things to do, although I am not an expert by any means, but I love just like spending 8 hours working on like really routine tasks, and bookkeeping is very satisfying for that. You? Yes, it's so good. But when you're a business owner, you don't really have 8 hours to spend on, things that are not like crucial in that exact moment. So for the first couple years, I was like, I'm going to do this bookkeeping work in batches, and it took a couple years for me to realize that if I just do a little bit every day or, a good bit every month, that's so much better than having to do so incredibly like stressful, like, focus deep on it once a year. So I would say for anyone starting out, definitely prioritize that work, hire an accountant to watch over your work, but learn how to do as much of it as possible with them supervising you. Right. and just do a little bit every day. Just keep up with it.
So that sounds like my motto, which is do 3 things a day to move the needle. That is what I write every day. What are the 3 things I'm doing today to move the needle? So it's exactly the same thing you just said, to do that. And the things that don't move the needle but must be done, like you said, let someone do it, that's their prowess.
Yeah.
So that you don't get bogged down in that kind of thing. So that's very good advice.
Don't let it pile up.
Okay, so this has been kind of a controversial question, which is, what's the funniest mistake? And someone said, I don't want to tell. Maybe they won't come into my store anymore and what my service is.
I had to practice. You told me you were asking this, and I had to practice it with a friend because I was like, "This is really embarrassing." And she's like, "You have to say. You have to say." I was like,
let's hear it.
You're gonna judge me. Okay, so when I was first ordering product for the business 3 years ago. So I've been in online business for the last 3 years. And so I had an inventory of my non-perishable items.
Right.
And I got this really amazing fish jerky company that I wanted to buy from, Neptune in Seattle. And I still buy from them 4 different flavors of fish jerky. It's like wild pollock or rockfish, really good flavors. So at that point, I think I misread the order form, or I wasn't quite thinking yet in terms of like cases. And so I meant to buy 10 bags of each of the 4 flavors. But instead I bought 10 cases of each of the 4 flavors. So I had 400 bags of fish jerky when I was like, just, the business was just starting, like definitely not enough customers. Yeah. And with just a website, I couldn't put them all in front of somebody and say like, here, buy them for a cheap price. I was like, will anyone take these?
Yes. Wow.
It was very sad. They're really delicious, but 400 is a lot to move, especially when in the beginning, people were just really coming for the oysters. So, yeah.
So what did you end up doing?
Giving them to as many friends and family as possible. My regular customers would get some included in every order until they were like, please stop.
Yeah. That would be tasting samples at the baby farmer's market.
I burnt out most people on them. And then I did have to throw some away after they expired. So I tried for a year or 2. As long as I could to sell them. But that's, the tough part about having so many products. Like there are so many amazing things, but inventory is so stressful because you don't know how fast something's going to move through. Yeah, that's why, I designed the business so I wouldn't have perishable items to worry about. Right. With that, it's all made or harvested to order. But even the stuff that's good for a number of years, it's amazing how fast those years go.
That's right.
And then you have to think in advance of it and get, more product.
For sure.
Yep.
Your skin deserves a sanctuary, and so do you. At Zen Aesthetics in Oak Harbor, experienced esthetician Adrienne Hawkins goes beyond skincare. She nurtures your soul while rejuvenating your skin. Step into a space where stress melts away and self-care takes center stage. From customized facials to expert skincare solutions, every treatment is designed to bring out your natural glow. Because beauty isn't just skin deep, it's an experience. Book your appointment today and find your Zen. Visit Zen Aesthetics on Instagram at Zen Aesthetics Whidbey or call 360-670-0445. Let me ask you this. One of the things I'm very curious is, do you have a story in your life or a person who is your most significant influence?
I would have to say my parents. So many people fit into the answer to that question. This community is spectacular, and I've had so many mentors and inspirational figures, and my grandparents and my sister, all sorts. But my parents really, they're both social workers, like I said, and they raised us with, they didn't ask, what are you going to do with your life? It was, they did, but it was much more like, how are you going to change the world? How are you going to improve the world? Wow. It was all very focused on like, what are you going to do with your life to like you were saying, like move the needle. Like, how are you going to really help other people with whatever it is you end up doing? You know, and they're like, there are so many different ways you can do this, but this is what we expect you to do. And it wasn't like you have to do this. It was just like, we know you're going to want to do this. And so how are you going to do it?
Right.
And I was like, I do. You're right.
Now at my age, of course, I'm much older than you. You start thinking about that with my own children and they're grown adults. And my theme was always, I want them to be really kind, contribute to society. I called it contributing member to society. And to me, that was a big umbrella, but I don't think that I did that well of a job. Talk about what you just said about your parents. How are you going to change society or contribute to it to make it better? That could have been I could have done a better job at that.
It's never too late.
Yeah. Well, because my own father didn't ever say that, but he took us places to do that, to help other people. And so one of the things that he did is we had to go to nursing homes, because that's what they were called back then, was nursing homes, and sit with elderly people and hold their hand and sing and play games and the whole thing. And because of that, I feel like I have a very healthy respect for aging people, for sure, instead of the disrespect. Even though when I'm driving by myself here on the island, nobody can hear some of the things I say when I'm behind that kind of thing. You know, I have to remember my parents are elderly. So, you know, not to be so hard on the elderly. But, you know, he just lived it in his life. So, you know, by example. So, yeah, I like that. Beautiful. That's a really good answer. And I really like when I meet your parents.
Yeah. Well, Barbara Dunn and David Wilder.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Barbara, she's got like concerts and all sorts of stuff all around town.
Yes.
Hummingbird Studio in Langley.
Yes. When you just said that, I'm like, I know who Barbara Dunn is. Wow. Okay. Didn't know that she was your mama. All right. So let's talk about living on the island. What do you love most about living here? That could be a long answer because you've been here a long time.
Yeah. I mean, proximity to the ocean. I've learned that I cannot live without it. I would not want to. The ability to take a beautiful walk in the forest or a beautiful walk on the beach. You know, I do not. I value that so much. So many people don't have that beauty just right around the corner. So it is spectacular that we can just have fresh air and quiet in nature. But primarily the people. You know, I moved back here temporarily during COVID, and I thought it was temporary, and then it was like, oh no, right, that's right. This is like all these spectacular people who are trying to work together and trying to, you know, make things beautiful and enjoyable. And the arts community here is so great. I grew up in the theater community and connected to so many different artists and musicians, and it's just
so. If you want to tell it, what is your favorite hidden gem or secret spot here? Why don't you say it?
Well, the Island Shakespeare Festival.
Yeah.
During the summer, mid-July through end of August, we put up a giant circus tent and have an outdoor theater. It is hidden. A lot of people don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell my real secret spots.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, because during the rest of the year, you'll drive past, you know, the high school, and then outside the old primary school, you'll see kind of a weird structure in the back. And you're like, what is that thing in the field? And then June 1st, a big circus tent goes up, and it's like, what's happening? The circus has come to town. And we have professional actors from all around the country come to it. I read about all of that when I first got here, and I even came into the store when it was a gift shop with that as well. So how do you hope the community, the whole island as a whole, or your own community here, evolves in the next 5 to 10 years? Well, I'm hoping that we continue on the same paths that we have as far as community and arts and love for each other and supporting and protecting each other. I think that is very crucial. And part of that is, and we talk about it a lot around here, that we need more affordable housing. Right. And we have so many vacation homes that sit empty for so much of the year. So I would hope that there's some movement to utilize those so that we don't have empty space on the island, so we don't have to build more structures. There are a lot of vacation homes that are rented out regularly, Airbnbs and VRBOs. And I recognize that those are really important because we also don't have hotels or motels more than, just a few of them. And we have so many tourists who come here, and we love that. We want the tourists to come here. So they need a place to stay, but we do need long-term places for locals to stay. So I'm hoping that gets sorted out. There are a lot of people working really hard on it from a policy level and a logistical level. Island Roots Housing has an office in this building, and they've been working on it directly. Some random big corporation to come in, and build a Hilton. But at the same time, it does require a lot of money, especially for something that can fit more than 6 people. So we do need a lot of money behind that. And that's what those businesses are helpful for, is having the capital to put into it. So it would be great if we can find some local with really good values and a whole lot of money who wants to build something that is big, but also maybe, tucked on 20 acres deep in Clinton or something out of the way for us.
Right. Yeah, I've been on some of the other islands, closer to Seattle. And they seem to have some resort type hotels and things like that, where it's kind of built into the woods and into the beach, and nothing obnoxious. And so I would imagine something like that here would be super nice. I mean, I do know that there's one in Langley here. The
Comforts?
More of a resort.
The Inn at Langley.
Yes. Things like that. That would take the place of so many Airbnbs, little cottages and things like that. But we could all go on. So what lessons do you think that the community has taught you?
Lean on each other. That give and take of supporting your community, and your community will support you. And I've seen just so much of that, of somebody needs something and, 20 people are offering it. And that's one of the advantages of, the Facebook community groups that sometimes end up with so much drama and gossip and everything. But sometimes you'll see, so much of the time actually, you'll see somebody, ask for something or need something, and so many people just, within minutes are right there for them.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I've been on and off those groups because sometimes they do get really crabby, and it's not what I see out in the community, what, the keyboard courage people that goes on. But I have seen that a lot, where someone will say, I have an elderly parent, we need to do blah, blah, blah in the yard. We don't have the equipment. And before you know it, there's 10, 15 people there cleaning it all up, and then you see all the thank yous. I'm like, there it is. There it is. Yeah. So, that's a good answer. So, nice. So why don't you tell the listener where they can find you, both online and on Whidbey Island?
Yeah. So I have a store in Bayview. It's Bayview Corner. The building is called the Bayview Cash Store. It was a grocery store called the Cash Store about 100 years ago. So not everyone knows that's what this building is called. We are the building where the Bayview Tap Room restaurant is. Whidbey Donuts was here. Mama Fish is opening a restaurant called Japonica in this building in the next month or two. And we will be collaborating on dinners a lot. It'll be like awesome. Sushi.
I'm so glad you told me that, because I was wondering what happened to her on the downtown Langley. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be like an 80-seat restaurant. Like, it'll be amazing. And I share this little room to the side, right up the stairs from the little parking lot outside that building. I share the shop space with the Island Shakespeare Festival. So you'll see signs for the Bard's Boutique and for Salinity. And in here you can purchase all of the non-perishable items that I carry and items that Island Shakespeare Festival sells to benefit their programs. Lots of stuff from local artists. And you can also do in-store pickup of the perishable items that I sell. So my website, www.eatsalinity.com, has all of the items, and you can choose either local delivery, local in-store pickup, or shipping anywhere in the country. I get really good shipping discounts. So even overnight shipping oysters to the other side of the country is, it's expensive, but it's not as bad as it would be if you tried it yourself.
Right.
And just order by Sunday at midnight, pick up on Friday.
Right. So listener, if you haven't been to this cute little store, one of the things I absolutely love about it are all the things that she carries from individual contributors on this island. I mean, there's a lot in here. I love that because I think shopping local and supporting people's art, their creativity. I mean, I walked in here and Emily is
knitting. Yeah.
Yes.
That will be
the right name.
That will be on the table for sale later today. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's awesome. So thank you for letting me interview you. It's so nice to meet you again. I've met you a couple of times at Bayview Farmers Market. Are you still there in the summer?
No. Once I started doing the concessions at the Shakespeare Festival, it was too much to balance the two. I did it 1 year and it nearly killed me. Yeah. But I'm hoping next year, and I will need staff to help me with that now that I have the store as well. But I do a lot of restaurant deliveries, and those are on Saturdays during the summer as well. So it was just too much to try and do. But I love that because it was, shucking oysters directly for people, being able to offer as much education as possible. And then you would have people who come up and say, oh, I harvest clams on the beach, or I go and pick up oysters, over there at low tide. And then I would get to say, like, well, have we checked the water quality that day? Are you sure it's safe to eat? Have they been baking in the sun? What temperature were they at? Did you check? Did you smell them before you ate them? And just kind of go through that safety checkpoint. Well, and then I can be reassured that like they're doing it safely. Yeah. If you're going to harvest yourself, great, but let's make sure that you're safe about it. Okay. Especially if you're sharing with somebody else.
Yeah, good tip. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of Local Whidbey with Magsy. Whether you're all about island life or just island bound in spirit, I hope you all are audacious islanders. Yes, that is a plug for my merch. Thanks for tuning in and celebrating the people, places, and magic that make Whidbey Island so special. Don't forget to share the love, tell a friend, leave a review if you have something positive to say, and follow along for more stories from our audacious island. Until next time, keep it quirky, keep it local, and keep loving Whidbey.